Well, hey, I get to start at the beginning with you. Some of your story I know, some of it as I was going through thinking about the show, I thought there's some things here I don't know. I don't know what your motive was at that point. But one of the things we'll get into is your pursuit of psychology, and in that, and this is part of my book, is I know that psychology, or I'm made to be aware that psychology puts some value on your first memories, right? Isn't that a thing? What's your very first memory? Which
Sure.
I, when I thought about that for myself, I couldn't find a whole lot of big merit in that. But what did dawn on me was what was the first thing that I wanted? What was the first tangible thing, that I wanted as a kid? It seemed more profound than my first memory of whatever, that would have been. And I wondered back, here you are, this Mennonite kid on the farm, what was the first thing you remember wanting? Was it an object? Was it I just want to not have to get up at 5 a.m. and go milk the stinking cows? What was it?
Now, it was probably a nicer bicycle.
Really? That's okay. That's my first memory, Dad. It's the bicycle in Tustin, California, and you're cleaning these people's home, and it was the Schwinn up in the rafters. You remember that?
Yes, I do. I do indeed. Well, for me as a little kid, that was important even then. It was both pleasure and a means of transportation to go see my friends, because closest friends were, 2-3 miles away. So it was functional, but I wanted something cool. I was the little crappy bicycles that we got from the dump, just pieced together. I never had a new bicycle. But I would put like cardboard with a clothespin on the spokes, so it'd make a sound. I was always modifying them. I did find not a bicycle, but a little tricycle thing that would have been like a little farmall tractor originally, but the main body was totally gone. So there was nothing, but the 3 wheels were still there, and pedals went back and forth to make it go. And then just a steering rod, nothing to hold it, but a steering rod that you could hold. I rode that thing day after day after day up and down our sidewalk. So it was kind of a different thing. And I was always looking for something that would be different, that would stand out, that would somehow be unique. So those things did motivate me. And that's why as a little kid, I started going door to door selling Christmas cards, anything I could do to come up with my own venture. So I'd have more options.
So but isn't that an anomaly? I mean, your parents were Amish, and now you're it doesn't get any more conservative than you on the farm, and you wanted something that looks cool. And today you're driving this, dark black vet that gets you from A to Z.
My tribute to the Amish.
I think, well, the color, yeah, but man, flashy or something to be seen. Did you have any context for that? I mean, where did that come from?
I was always intrigued with the things that I saw. And the one thing that I really remember vividly on the farm was the visits from our family doctor. He would come to our house back our long dirt lane, and he would be driving this big, long, beautiful car, and he'd step out with the gorgeous suit and tie. And I thought, wow, that's the kind of life I want to have. Not what I see here in the farm. I want something like that. And thus my choice early on was really to go to medical school.
Yeah.
And I went 3.5 years in pre-med in college thinking I would go in that route. And it was really because of that one singular influence in my life, our family doctor.
But that's what's so curious to think of a reason. I mean, I doubt you had a conscious reason at that time, but when you look back, was it when you look back with hindsight, do you look at that and say, gosh, at that point, did that stand out to you because of I don't know, was it a disdain for the circumstance you were in, or was it just a curiosity from something that was so starkly different?
It was a combination of those, I think. I knew that we were very, very poor. I mean, there were Christmases when I got a new pair of blue jeans and an orange. The new pair of blue jeans being my one pair for the upcoming year.
Yeah.
And that's the way we would, grandma would wash them, once a week, and I'd wear those every day to school. So I knew we were really poor. So I very quickly dreamed about more than what we had. I mean, I remember when we bought our first cow, a Guernsey cow, and we'd milk that cow by hand. And then we got another one and got up to 12 that we were still milking by hand twice a day, 365 days a year. And I just, from as early as I have any memories, I was thinking about, not that I hated what we were doing. I really did not. I loved the variety of experiences, being exposed to a little bit of plumbing, a little bit of electrical, a little bit of mechanics, the agriculture side, planting things, watching them grow. I really enjoyed all those things. But I also wanted to explore beyond the little tiny world that I was seeing there.
Well, so that obviously continued. So there, I mean, so whether it was, so you're seeing that now, so it may not have been a conscious thought then, but then at some point, well, now then you were sent to boarding school. You had parents, a father who did not value, is that fair to say, an educational route? He wanted you to be on the farm. Is that true?
Absolutely.
Okay.
He had gone to the sixth grade. The state required that we would go till I was 16 when I was young. That's the only reason he wanted us to go to school. We had to go till we were 16. Now, as things developed, they then saw the merit of allowing us to finish high school. But school was an intrusion into our daily life on a farm.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was this time away from doing the things that were really important. There's other ways to learn. And my father did go ahead and learn. He was self-educated, and taking a position as pastor of a little church. He studied a lot, read tons and tons of books. So it wasn't like he was disdaining education, but the process of having to be gone for such a big part of the day in school was seen as a real interruption in what was most important.
Well, then you were, I wouldn't say this is motive, you were forced to go to boarding school because they were concerned about your extracurricular activities.
That's true. Yes.
Okay.
I
All
was
right.
spending far too much time with a heathen girl, a girl outside of our little legalistic community.
Yeah.
That concerned them, and they thought the best way to control that was to get me out of town totally. And it was one of those, Brer Rabbit experiences, don't throw me in the briar patch. And the rabbit, knowing that if they threw him in the briar patch, he would be able to run free and they wouldn't be able to chase him.
Yeah.
Well, it was kind of like that for me. I was forced to go against my will to a boarding school in Harrisonburg, Virginia, and got there and realized, I think the first morning, you mean I can sleep till 7:30, get up, brush my teeth, and go to school?
Yeah.
No milking cows, no throwing hay bales, in the heat of summer. I'm not out there, in the field. My goodness, this is amazing. It really changed my perspective even then on what was possible. And I started seeing people from other kind of lifestyles doing other things work-wise that gave them more opportunities. So it was an amazing eye opener for me. And I mean, it was like I won the lottery to be there.
So when you look back then, again, going back to motives, what were some of the things? Did you get good grades? I assume you did.
I did. Funny, just the other day, your mom and I were looking through some grade cards that I had from when I was really young. I mean, first, third, fourth grade in there. I got some D's and F's in there. But once I realized that those grades were going to open doors for me, then I started getting good grades.
Okay.
And in high school, I did end up with good grades because I was seeing ahead enough to realize that's going to open the door to college. And I already knew that I wanted to do that, again, against my parents' wishes, but I wanted to do that there too. I got good grades simply because I knew it would open doors beyond that as well.
Okay. So there you are. So good grades. So there was a motive to get good grades. It would open doors. At that time, though, are you looking forward and saying, man, I think I know a direction I want to go? I've got to drive to go this direction because of X, or was it still just the day-to-day enjoyment of a new life and having fun? Playing your stereo that I still have in my house, and I want to hold your hand by the Beatles.
That's right. Part of the growing up experience.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't that I had things really mapped out in terms of career or business. I just was voracious learner. I wanted to read and to listen and hear things that would expand my vision for opportunities. And as you know, when I was about 13 years old, as a poor farm kid, I somehow got a hold of the little 33 and a third recording by Earl Nightingale, The Strangest Secret. Talked about we become what we think about. And I thought, can I really change the direction of my life as it seems to be a poor farm kid, just by changing what I allow into my mind? It became a really foundational principle then and continues so today to do that. And so I would read, I would go to our little public library. We didn't have radio or TV in our house, but I would go to the little public library in a little tiny town, Johnsville, Ohio, and pull out books. And I was drawn to like the Horatio Alger stories, Rags to Riches, stories about people who started with nothing, then ended up doing really well. And so I was filling my brain with that kind of stuff. I would pick up the little self-help magazines, or sometimes free in grocery stores because they had ads in the back that paid for them. And I'd respond to things. I'd send away for things in there. And that's when I, even as a little tyke, sent away for material that I could sell door to door. And I'd go do that, fill orders, and had that first rush of understanding if I do something that has value, and hold my head high, let people know about it, they give me their money willingly, I take out the cost, and that's profit. And that just has always been thrilling to me to understand that. You know, the story of when I was probably 12 years old or so, recognizing that we had a lot of sweet corn in the garden after your grandma had canned and frozen all that we could possibly use as a family. And I saw that and thought, wow, I know people love our sweet corn. I love our sweet corn. Rather than just seeing it go to waste there, ultimately feeding it to cows, I'd get up real early in the morning when the dew was still on there, pick those ears of corn. And we had one tractor, a Ford tractor, little red belly Ford, and had a small trailer that I could hook behind that. And as a 12-year-old, I'd drive that 2 miles up to the paved road, put up my little sign, sweet corn, 30 cents a dozen, and sell that. Now, in that sense, I had no cost of goods. And these are things, my mom and dad just kind of scratch their head. They really didn't understand that as being a legitimate use of my time. But I just saw opportunity like that everywhere I turned. And I just started following that path, clean up neighbors' cars.
But why? Again, what, your brother didn't do that, I assume. Your sisters weren't do that. I assume your peers weren't necessarily. So here you are, again, I assume an anomaly in your environment doing this. So you had the one exposure to a doctor with nice things and a different thing. But at that time, why? If somebody had asked you, Dan, why are you doing that? Why are you taking the extra time? You're working already. You got school, you got to get up, milk the cows, instead of just goofing off and swinging and jumping in the pond and, whatever. What's the motive? What was the reason for doing that? Was it just the achievement of selling something, interacting, doing commerce? Was there a motive of an object? He said, if I do this, I get this money, I can buy or do this. Where was it?
There was a lot of that. I mean, I saw how money was handled. Money was very scarce in our household, and I got no allowance. I mean, my work on the farm was an expected obligation because I was part of the family. So anything I had to figure out another way to generate my own money. My dad used to loan me out to other farmers who needed help. I was pretty able-bodied and understood farming. So he would loan me out and with no pay, just because that's what we did in that kind of farming community, especially in the Amish Mennonite community. So I had to look for ways that I could generate money. And when we talk about these years where I was 12, 13, 14, I was counting the days till I was 16 years old. I always loved cars, everything about them. I loved the mechanical things. I gravitated to mechanical things on our farm. My dad was not interested in that at all. So I became the mechanic when things needed to be fixed. I was, as a little kid again, I would take apart lawnmowers, just take them apart just so I'd understand how they worked and then put them back together again. So I'd understand internal combustion, understand ways to make things better than they were. I put together contraptions that made the tractor go faster than it was intended to go, and like that. But in doing that, I also had those opportunities where, I would do a complete detail on a neighbor's car. We lived on a dirt road. A couple times a year, they'd come by, the county would, and drop some oil down there just to kind of kill some of the dust. Well, the combination of dust and oil would get on the cars. Cars were messy. And so I would remove all the tar. I'd use kerosene from our tank for kerosene on the farm, use kerosene to clean the cars, wash them, wax them. And that was like $25. That was a lot of money. And I started accumulating my own money, anticipating the time when I was 16 years old. Because I knew when I turned 16, your grandpa wasn't going to take me down to the Chevy dealership and buy me a new Corvette. It wasn't going to happen. Whatever was going to happen, I was totally on my own. So there was a lot of that where I saw what having my own money would lead to. And I started seeing opportunities on every side for making money.
Okay, so I'm again, this is going to be an anomaly of a show together because of my context with you. But when I look at that, I think back to my own. I wanted, me, I wanted a bike. That was a huge thing. And then I wanted a car, and with your help, I did have your help. But I had one at, 15, and I think I was on my second car before I even got my license. But for me, it was because of the freedom it gave me, because of what I could go do. I was eager to go and be free and explore and experience and whatever. But with the way that you show or talk about your past and making the tractor go faster and taking apart the lawnmower, I didn't see that. It feels like a disconnect because you did not go forward as a kid. I didn't know you as a grease monkey. You were never rarely in the engine of a car or anything. You did the aesthetics, even your business, auto appeal was an aesthetic thing, but I didn't know you as an engine guy and working on an engine guy. I know other people that had that interest and propensity. And today they do that. They enjoy that. They get into the engine. You don't do that. And I don't remember that as a kid. So did that interest wane somewhere? Or when you look back at it, was it not so much a mechanical interest, but it was, hey, how can I make the tractor go faster? It was a means to an end. Does that make sense? I'm curious. I don't see
you missed the years, of course, not being born yet when I really was a grease monkey. I did a whole lot of, as if you recall, the first car I had, I paid $275 for the body of a 1931 Ford 5-window coupe. Then I chopped and channeled it. So I had to weld a frame to sit that on, and got a Chrysler 331 Hemi engine, put it in there, got a Packard transmission out of the junkyard, welded the drive shaft so that it would operate Oldsmobile rear end. I put that together piece by piece. So I really did understand cars. And there were a lot of cars, even after your mom and I were married, where if it needed a transmission, I'd remove it. I'd jack it up, get under there, remove the transmission, put a new one in. Now, cars have gotten much more complex these days, but there used to be nothing that I wouldn't do myself. It was rare that I would ever take a car to a mechanic for anything until later years. And later years, when I started to have more options, I was able to delegate some of that to other people.
Yeah.
But I have always enjoyed being in the trenches with cars.
Yeah. Well, going back to, boarding school, going towards college and looking at the things that drive you. So we hear some of those in the early years, to seek opportunity, to seek experiences, and to have a different lifestyle than what you had. When you look at, okay, so you are heading towards college. Well, you knew you wanted to do college. You said that, right? You knew that you wanted to do that. But where you say, okay, I wasn't totally clear on my vocational pursuit and career objective necessarily. were you more clear on the things you knew you did not want to do?
Yes, I was more clear in the things I did not want to do. College was 100% a somewhat socially acceptable way to get off the farm. And what happened in that experience, my dad didn't want me to go to college. I owed it to him to work in a farm when I graduated from high school. So I would work in a farm, get up at 5:30 in the morning, milk the cows, blah, blah, blah. And I started going to a branch campus of the Ohio State University in Mansfield, Ohio. So I would work all day and then I'd go to school at night from 6 to 10 o'clock. So I did that. So that was totally on my own time, off the farm clock, against his wishes, no pay, no support, no discussion, anything. I would do that. Well, then I met your mom in that period of time as well. So the 6 to 10 o'clock got extended beyond that, to midnight. I mean, there were days when I would come home, or nights when I would come home, go in the house, change my clothes, and go out and start milking cows. I got extremely sick.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get over it. I had what's called now mononucleosis. I couldn't get over it. I was totally exhausted, couldn't get over it. And finally, with the help of, and support of a couple doctors, realized I could not continue doing like I was doing. And that's when I told my dad, I'm going to leave the farm. That was a tough decision because he was expanding. We were having more of a milking herd. He was putting in modernized equipment, putting up silos, expanding in terms of land that he owned and controlled. And I'm saying, his number one guy, I'm out of here. That was tough, but I had to make that decision. And if I were going to be trapped in what my past told me to expect, if I was going to carve out a new path for myself. And I decided at 18 years old, I was going to carve out a new path for myself.
Yeah. When you even say you owed him to work on the farm, that was, again, just a familial cultural expectation.
Absolutely. We never discussed work that you love, work that's meaningful, fulfilling, had no bearing on anything. We did what was necessary, what was practical. And that's making the farm work, eke out a living on a farm. Don't worry about much beyond that. And the theology that kind of overlaid this is, just try not to screw up too bad here. Then we get to heaven and everything will be wonderful. But there was never an emphasis on being joyful or fulfilled here. Well, that didn't set well with me. So a lot of my journey was not only psychological, but it was spiritual as well, to try to figure this out, try to make more sense than what I was seeing. I thought, this doesn't make any sense at all. I'm going to figure this out. So my academic path took me on a process of personal exploration more than it did on a career path.
And I want to ask about that, but looking back again, when you look at, like me asking that question, were you more clear on what you did not want than maybe what you wanted? Was there a feeling of, whether you knew it now or again in retrospect, of rebellion? Was that a part of the drive as well? And how did that affect your self-image?
There was rebellion, not in a malicious way, but in terms of saying, I'm going to have more than what I'm seeing here. Why does a car have to be just basic transportation? Why does it have to be black? Why can't I experience joy even in doing that? Why can't I expect a sense of joy in what I'm doing work-wise? Why is that unrealistic? If there really is a heavenly father, would he be this harsh on his children? I started to ask those kind of questions, and all those things working together took me on that path. So there was rebellion in terms of how it looked in turning my back on my dad's expectations for me, leaving not only the farm, but also his church. I mean, that's a tough thing too, with him being the pastor, for me to say, I'm not going to go to church there anymore either. I mean, so those were tough decisions to try to find this other way. But I was so strong-willed. I mean, I was not easily disciplined. I was not easily kept within guidelines. I mean, I had experiences in school. I mean, there was one time in school, I was in about the 6th grade, and we had our coach and math teacher was this real burly, heavy set guy and just sourpuss, just hard, no, couldn't get along with anybody. And so he was mean, and we were having lunch and we had bananas that particular day. So I threw my banana peel out on the floor behind us. Well, he came by and it was like, that better be gone before I come back around here. Well, the guy sitting next to me, my friend, knew better than to mess with that. So he reached around and got the banana peel. Well, I took mine and slipped it out on the floor right behind him without him knowing it. That coach came back by, saw that. He jerked that kid up out of there, took him and whipped his butt. I mean, this was back in school when you could do that. Well, in doing so, the truth ultimately came out. So by the time he got to me, he was livid. And I got lit up with a paddle. It was about 6 inches wide. It had holes drilled in it all the way through. And I got it good. But you know what? Even in that, I can remember that day. It was worth it.
Well, so again, so with that and with your dad leaving the farm, leaving the church, were there feelings, again, when we look at your own self-image and trajectory forward of, gosh, yeah, I'm kind of a rebel amongst this. I'm an outcast, or I'm an anomaly. Was it a good or bad feeling, or a balance of both? Because there's obviously a lot of room for guilt within the possibility of that. So did that eke in, or did you feel, again, I can't think of a better word than a rebellious aspect as opposed to a guilt complex?
I was so committed to seeing new horizons. I knew that I was disappointing my parents. I felt bad about that, but I didn't feel guilty about the choices that I was making. Got a lot of criticism, and of course, not only from my parents, but also the other people in their church saw me as being rebellious and one of those hard to control kids that's ultimately probably going to end up in trouble. And they had other stories about people who, left the church, left the farm, got into trouble, messed up their lives. I mean, I heard all of that, but it didn't deter me at all. I was just opinionated enough that I was going to pursue this. I had heard so many of those stories from what I call masters of achievement. I mean, my gosh, listening to people like Zig Ziglar and Brian Tracy and Dennis Waitley, all those masters of achievement that I listened to, Earl Nightingale, Napoleon Hill. And I heard people who who were not just rebellious, who were not just greedy, materialistic, people who were really balanced, who had great values, both spiritually and in family, morals. I mean, great role models. I wasn't looking to be, just the next bad dude on a motorcycle. I was seeing these guys as models very quickly that really had lives that I wanted to emulate.
So more Earl Nightingale, not James Dean, as a role
There you
model.
go.
Okay. All right.
That's
No,
right.
that,
Yeah.
so there you go into college, and you're going to do that. And of course, I know the story that you were exposed to, or I don't know how decided to pursue psychology, because it was, again, is that true? You saw an opportunity to expand, change, question the norm, expand your mind. And that's what led you into psychology?
Yes. And I mean, it's no secret. I was led in psychology. I never had a desire to be a psychotherapist or counselor. My study of psychology was purely for personal understanding. I wanted to figure out Dan Miller. And so I studied people like William James and Carl Jung and figured out how did they blend their ideas about spirituality and living well? How did they bring all that together? So it was very much a personal quest to understand me. It had nothing to do with a career path. It did its purpose in getting me off the farm. And again, instead of just telling my dad, I'm going to just leave because I don't want to do this, I said, I want to pursue college because that'll give me some other options from which I can explore.
So I want to ask that, because you said a minute ago in talking about the perspective of beauty and joy, and a car that just is black, can it not also, look nice and be fun? Or you said it in regards to, would God only have it this way? And I was going to ask then, during that formative time, did you ever question God, or did you just question your view of God? Because again, I know the further story, as you get into psychology, I think you got to the point of questioning your God in general as well. What was the faith journey along this?
Wow. That goes pretty deep
I
because it
know.
was so ingrained in our family culture. The faith journey was such a big part. I mean, everything related back to that. We did what we had to do work-wise, but the real important things were our faith, to be believers and to ultimately go to heaven. That's it. That's our only purpose for being here. That's the main goal. But in seeing how our family and extended family lived, I got to the point where I said, if that's Christianity, I'll take my chances going the other way. It was that stark that I'll take my chances going a different direction, because I'm going to figure this out. And if that's the only option, I'm not going that path anyway. We heard a lot about narrow is the path and few there be that find it. We knew we were on a path. And I mean, even the people down the street who were Methodists and Baptists were not on that path.
Yeah.
We knew that. And I said, I can't live like that. I mean, it didn't make sense. It didn't fit. It didn't fit even as I started to read the Bible myself, just didn't make sense. But I really made the decision that if that's Christianity, I'll take my chances in hell.
Okay, so because that's what's interesting with, when we look at motive, we look at reason, we look at drive, we look at goals, and we want to say that it is, I think in personal development and self-help, we put you put the avatar out there of the thing you want. What's that desire? Let's make a goal and let's go after it. And yet we know, back to psychology and humanity, we're primarily more driven by pain than desire, as far as actually getting up off the couch and doing something. And here, even though I know you as a guy who has always had desires and going after that, it still seems, early on, a lot of the motive was just as much of what I don't want. These are pains that I don't want. Here's a family and a faith that is not inspiring at all. Doesn't give you something that you're motivated to go after. You're motivated not to do that. So if anything, it's just the motive to go a different direction, even if you don't know what that direction is yet.
Absolutely. I
Okay.
did not know what that direction was at all. And it took some time for me to meet real life people. I had those virtual mentors that I was talking about because I would listen to those cassette programs over and over and over again. But it took some time for me to meet real life people who modeled the kind of life that I was talking about, who had both a strong faith and they wore diamonds and drove Corvettes and had fancy houses and traveled around the world. I thought, oh my gosh, it really is possible.
Yeah.
But there was a gap there where I could not fit those two together. I thought it was a really harsh choice. So it was some time before I started to find people who blended the best of what I was seeing, the best of what I could imagine, and a strong faith. That was a real pivotal time for me.
Do you look back on some of those times? So here you're going to go into college and then you're going to leave college and go after and look at some of those drives and say, man, some of those were good and healthy and true. Some of those were unhelpful.
I had really good models in terms of the kind of mentors that I chose to follow, the people that I chose to listen to, the books that I chose to read. Somehow there was a filter there that didn't give me a lot of temptation in areas that I think would have been self-defeating.
Yeah.
Just wasn't there. So I was really fortunate in that. Of course,
Yeah.
met your mom when we were both very, very young, and we grew together because we kept learning together. And I started going to conferences, then to meet some of these people face to face, and it just kept me on that path. I was really clear about the mindset that I wanted, not the detailed application. I mean, not a specific business or career, but the mindset that I knew would carry me forward in the direction I wanted to go.
Well, and that's, and I've told you this before, and I've said it so many times, that you have always been an inspiration to me in your voracious quest to learn, to listen to people, to even today, that you never got to the point of going, okay, I'm kind of arrived. I'm the man, but that happens. You've witnessed plenty of people who have done that and are on stage today, still acting that way. And, but that you didn't do that. It's been a great mentor for me to see that in you, because I struggle sometimes with my own egotism, I think, and not being coachable. And that was my own rebellious streak, but this show's not about my motive. It's about yours. So, so I'm going to fast forward past mom and kid and the initial kids, because you ended up then, because and yeah, some of these, I know the shallowness of the story, but not the depth. But you moved to California, so here you are in Ohio. You moved to Bowling Green, Kentucky, and you had some things that happened in there, and you're teaching some. But you went out there to take a job as a psychologist, right, at the church.
Yes, it was in a private practice with a
Okay.
counselor. Yeah,
Okay.
but it was at the Center for Human Understanding. That's
Uh-huh.
a grandiose term, the
Uh-huh.
Center for Human Understanding. But I took a position and I was fully independent, but we had some referrals coming in and I was doing the evaluations and the counseling for people who are on the younger age scale, working with an older established therapist who was seeing those people who are a little farther down the line.
Well, I want people to hear this. So here you go after college for a reason that in your sense was legit. You didn't get in the psychology thing because, oh man, there's a really pretty girl, I'll do that as a major. We know
Yeah.
people make decisions that shallowly. You didn't. You wanted to go learn about Dan Miller. So you go through that. It helps you. You gain benefit from it. But now you end up with a degree in this area. And now you get the opportunity for a job that's fitting. That's what we're supposed to do, right? You spent the money, the time, the investment to get this degree. Now you've got a job opportunity. You go in that and things didn't pan out.
Well, what you're describing is the time after I had my master's degree. So I had my bachelor's in psychology, continued to go deeper, got my master's degree, which would seem even more that I'm committing myself to a career path. It really wasn't that. But because of that, met this guy in California. We went on a trip after I finished my master's degree. You were what? You were about 4 years old. We spent 3 months on the road. We had a little pop-up camper and we just stayed in different areas and just enjoyed that time. But as part of that time, visited with this guy in California and agreed to join him in his practice as a younger counselor. So we moved out there and I worked with him for 3 months. 3 months. And I said, this is nuts. See, I describe all those things even when I was younger that were more entrepreneurial, selling Christmas cards door to door, detailing my farmer friends' cars, selling sweet corn beside the road. And now I'm in a position where I show up dressed in nice clothes every morning and have people who are complaining about their privileged lives. And I said, this is crap. I'm out of here. I am not going to do this. So I joined a friend that I had gotten to know through our church out there who was in the car business. And again, I'm back putting cars together.
Whose wife is within 100 feet of you now in the pool with mom, right?
That's right.
Yeah, that's great.
They live in Northern California. We're in Florida. And Jerry's wife, Irene, is right here with us today. Yeah, we're still friends after all those years. But I did not see the value in just sitting there listening to people complain about their lives. And it was just a reminder again that I am not a good fit. I'm way too impatient. I'm way too intolerant of people complaining about their lives when they have the power to change if they chose to do so. I said, I can't do this. So I joined Jerry, my friend, in the car business. Had an absolute blast, finding, reconditioning, selling cars, helping them meet their needs with cars, having access to any kind of car I wanted to drive. Yeah, loved it.
Well, and I enjoyed that time of life with you as well. But I do want to take this because obviously there's so many details we go through. But you go through that selling cars. You guys moved back east because you wanted
Before
yeah.
before you leave the selling cars, there's something there that I think is important because in doing so, selling cars, I mean, you know how used car salesman is ranked on in the list of honored professions, pretty
Uh-huh.
far down the list.
Uh-huh.
And people are like, you got to be kidding me. You got your master's degree in psychology and now you're not using it. Well, see, that's an interesting question. Now you're not using it. One of the things that happened right out of the gate when I started selling cars, we were in Anaheim, California, had a young guy walk onto the lot, not driving a car, wearing blue jeans and a t-shirt. That's a real red flag. Any experienced car salesman will prejudge and decide this guy's not a real candidate. I'm not going to waste my time with him. I did. I went out and talked to him. We looked at cars. He was drawn to a Corvette. We had one Corvette on the lot. That's the one he liked. I said, geez, you want to take it for a spin? We did. We went for a drive, came back. I just kept moving forward in this process. Said, if you were to purchase the car today, would you get financing? No, I'd just pay for it. I took him into the office, wrote up the paperwork, turned it around. He stood up, pulled up his t-shirt and started pulling out stacks of $20 bills, paid for that car. Now here's the rest of the story. In that next year, when you include that guy, his mom and dad, his brothers and sisters, his cousins, I sold 14 cars to that one extended family. Did I use my degree in psychology to listen, understand, ask questions, show compassion, empathy? I think perhaps I did. But that's the kind of dichotomy we often make with degrees. Gee, you're not using your degree. Well, that's why a degree is part of personal development. If you get a degree, do whatever you have to, lie, cheat, and steal just so you get a piece of paper so somebody give you a job, you're going to be disappointed. But if you see it as part of the personal development process, personal growth, that can never be taken away. I value the degrees that I've got. I went back and, went to school again after that. Again, not because I thought it was going to change my career, but because I enjoy the process of growth, personal development.
Well, okay. So, and I was gonna, and I don't want to jump quite there yet, but here you were for 3 months sitting across the table from somebody, as you said, listening to their problems and said, this is not for me. And yet for the past, how many decades, how often have you sat across the table from somebody, not listening to their problems necessarily, listening to their desires, but the problems are a part of it, but it's a different capacity. And you're still doing that.
But that's a big distinction between counseling and coaching.
Yeah.
Counseling, if we look at where somebody is today, we're going to look at what has happened to get you here. What happened back years ago? How'd your mommy potty train you? All those significant things. We spend a lot of time there. Coaching, we say, okay, where are you today? Where do you want to be 3 years from now? What decisions do we have to make right now to put you on a path to be where you want to be 3 years from now? It's very forward oriented, very future oriented. So there's a real distinction there. And that's when I did find that sweet spot for me, recognizing I don't have the patience for counseling, but as a coach, when somebody's already successful, already moving in the right direction, and they're saying, how can I get here and accomplish this? Man, I'm in. That was a real revelation for me. When I was going through my academic programs, we didn't have the term coaching. It was too new. We didn't really understand it. Coaching applied to sports teams where you have a coach. But the idea of coaching wasn't really popularized until after I had been doing it for a period of time. That is a fit for me.
Yeah, no, but I am curious
I
because
want to work with people who have the same vision I did as a kid.
oh,
How
yeah.
can I get there someplace I've never been before?
And I'm curious and quick rabbit trail over here though, because I understand that. I mean, I grew up with you talking to me, where are you now? Where do you want to go? What do we do to get there? Obviously though, that you have people and have worked with people and where you find that they are handicapping themselves. because of something in the past that needs to be dealt with, and they're not able to go forward effectively until they do that. Do you, I literally don't know. I don't, do you address that aspect of them, or do you say something for some of you, you need to go do some counseling before we can go forward? I mean, I know you, I'm saying that because I know you don't completely disdain, you don't dismiss the reality of sometimes needing to go back and understand at least, or be clear some of the things that you're doing now to handicap yourself going forward.
Yes, there's a lot of people that have come to me over the years where I've made that referral, and I have a list of competent counselors. We need them. I value what they do. That's not me. Yes, you really need to do that first. However, there are a lot of things that people see as even big obstacles, big things that happen to them, traumatize them along the way, that if they made the decision, they could walk out of that today. You don't have to spend 5 years muddling through, the fact that you were beaten by a math teacher in the 6th grade. Get over it.
Yeah. 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 And
So,
there we go ahead.
so there's a lot of that. Now, my brand, 48 days. There's a reason for that, because even as a coach in the early days, I would work with people who came and said, boy, my, work life stinks. I want to change this. We map out a new plan. And I run into them a year later, they hadn't done anything. I'm like, what's up with that? Well, I'm waiting until, the last kids get out of school, till we pay the mortgage off, blah, 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 whatever. There's got to be a timeline in which you decide in advance you're going to move forward. And I made that 48 days, and it's been like magic for me. But that does eliminate some people. There's no question about it. I'll work with people. We go through an aggressive, proactive process for 48 days. If on day 49, you're still where you were at the beginning and you're still comfortable with that, that's fine. I'll still love you, be your friend, but I'm moving on. I don't work with that person anymore. I work with people who are that motivated and they make decisions to move forward into new seasons of their life. So it eliminates a lot of people, but that defines what I do.
Yeah. I'll forever blame you for not giving me the capacity to make excuses. Totally sucks. 15 kids, all that stuff going on. I know. I just got to go do it now. Dad didn't give me the capacity to make an excuse. Well, so you take, so I get that. So here you are doing used car sales, does psychology, especially doing it with morals and ethics and future sight in the value of a customer and whatnot. I mean, this is classic Zig Ziglar sales, which I know you were a student of, and doing it. Yeah. What?
Yes.
Yeah. On doing moral selling, which again, if anybody, and I don't know how many times I find myself saying this, if you've not read Secrets of Closing the Sale, please do that. And you will find out the integrity of selling and doing it the right way. So you're doing that using your degree beautifully. Then you go and, there's a story there, but you ultimately go, we go back to Kentucky. You start a business doing aftermarket accessories on cars. That was Auto Appeal, very successful. So now you're more, even there, would you say that you stepped more into you're a businessman's role? You're running a business. You are having success. You're buying products. You're selling things. You're making a good income. You got one van. You got two vans. You got three vans. You but rented out a warehouse. Now you've got employees. And I remember that, that was part of my childhood, is driving to dealerships first with you and then with employees you had, and you got this business that's rolling along. And as you said at the time, it was ripe to be franchised and to just increase business. And yet you didn't do that. And I want to ask about the motives there. So you've got good motives, here you're raising a family, you're making revenue, you're doing something you enjoy. It may not be altruistic, saving the world, but man, it was good. You enjoyed it and you're employing people now. And then things went south. What happened there?
Well, if I had known at the time you're describing about franchising, I would have done that. What I had was a perfect setup for that. However, it's one of those things that in retrospect, had I gone down that path, things are way different today in the car business. The model I was using really waned in popularity.
I was going to say, isn't it obsolete? I was trying to explain this to one of the kids and say, yeah, what he did, I don't think that exists anymore.
Yeah, it's pretty obsolete. Yeah, it really is. So I would have put a lot of time and effort and money into something that probably had a short lifespan anyway. So in retrospect, I'm glad I didn't pursue that. Yeah. But I got into another business, a health and fitness center, simply because I was lured in by the money that was involved. It had no fit for me. I was violating all kinds of things, had all kinds of red flags. My wife, your mom, said, "This doesn't make sense. You shouldn't do this." And I said, "Well, I'm going to do it anyway." I had 7 banks turn me down for putting the deal together. And I went to some friends. They put in money. I did it anyway. So I had this business. It was never a fit. I don't enjoy health and fitness centers. Don't enjoy the kind of preening in front of mirrors that people do.
Well,
But
it
I,
had no, yeah, it had, as a kid, it had no fit for you. So here you're doing cars that you know and enjoy. The business is going well. You sold it to an employee, right?
yes,
Sold the business to the employee, and
yes.
you've got this health club. I, yeah, I mean, where
Well, here's
was
part.
that?
Here's part of the motive, and
Yeah.
I don't know that I've ever really explained this to you. I love change, challenge, and variety.
Okay.
The worst thing I can experience is if something is successful and it's predictable.
And
If it,
monotonous. And yeah, I get
yeah,
that.
if it gets predictably successful, I lose interest. I'm going to start to self-sabotage. That's why today I have a very different kind of business model with 7 different components to it. So there's a lot of moving pieces at any given
Well,
time.
and I understand. I got that from you. I am not a maintainer. I'm not an
Okay.
admin maintain. I just have no joy in it. I don't care if it makes $1 million a day. I'm bored to tears. And so I'm in a model like you where every day I get to create something new. It's the only thing that gets me out of bed in the morning. Well,
Yeah, there you go. All right.
okay.
So that was why I left the auto accessories business, is just because of that. It was predictable. It was a lot of fun. I had great relationships, but I was ready for something new. So I moved into health and fitness. It was not a good fit. I made some decisions about changes too quickly. The bank that I had handshake relationship with changed ownership 3 times in 2 years, and all those old relationships were gone. They saw me as um, a threat with open-ended lines of credit, put the pressure on me. I ended up selling the business at auction. I wasn't concerned about it. I just said, "Yeah, I'll just sell it and move on to the next thing. Not a big deal. I can always figure out something else to do." I've never been at a loss for ideas, but the sale of that did not turn out the way that I intended. I thought I'd at least walk out with a shirt on my back. And instead, as you know, it did not go well. And I woke up the next morning, realized I was about $430,000 in debt, a lot of that to the IRS. So it started another chapter there where I had to really take a fresh look at not just doing things that were fun and easy, but really be serious about having more strategy, more forethought in what I did do.
Just as a curiosity, 436,000,
Or 30,000.
which if we did the inflation today,
Oh,
it's a lot
yeah,
of money.
yeah.
How, and what was the timeline between that day and the day that it was done? No
12
more,
years.
12 years,
Being an
12 years.
optimistic entrepreneur, I thought, a couple years, I'll knock this out and be on my way. But it's interesting at that period of time, and I had 2 clear choices. And I had a master's degree at that point in clinical psychology. I was an adjunct at the university. I could have gotten a job teaching, no problem at all. But in doing so, I would have had an income, $60,000, $70,000, and the math wouldn't work. I had 3 small children at that point, you and your 2 younger siblings, 3 children. And with that kind of income, and that kind of debt, I'd never see the light of day. I'd always be buried under debt. And of course, people encourage me to file bankruptcy. This is where a piece of my history.
I was going to ask. Yeah.
People encourage me to just file bankruptcy, walk away from that. There's a legal provision for that. Of course, the IRS debt would not go away, but all the rest would. And I said, nah, I never considered it for a nanosecond. Because of being raised Mennonite Amish, one of the things that's really a strong principle, and something your younger brother has tattooed on his arm, is word is bond. If you give your word, that holds more weight than a 20-page legal document that you can try to find a way to weasel out of. I'd given my word to these people. They were vendors. They were people that I knew. And I told him, I said, you know, you sue me, there's nothing there. You won't get anything. But if you give me time, I'll chip away at it. And so I did. Well, instead of taking 2 years, it took me much longer. It took me 12 years till that beautiful day in September where I walked in and had 14 pages of IRS lien releases peel off the fax machine.
Mhm.
That ended that chapter. I was so thrilled to be back to zero net worth. I mean, I was absolutely ecstatic. My net worth was zero. And I was 53 years old.
Wow. Yeah, it's so funny. I was telling the kids recently, they were asking about IRS stuff and taxes. And I said, you know, I can admit that I had 1 year. I don't know what the document is. I haven't seen one, but 1 year I got this document from the IRS and it showed my income throughout the years. And there was 1 year, I can't remember what it was, and my income was zero
Oh,
for the entire year because I had done some stupid things. I didn't learn well enough from your mistakes and used loan money and stupidity and made zero income. Well, you then, you know, so from that, so there you are. And I know you took, is that when you guys moved to Nashville? Maybe you took a job just doing sales. It was an educational arena, but you're doing sales, what you knew how to do. You could make more income. And somewhere along the line, and I don't know this either, did it happen from a conscious thought of, but you started putting together, well, you started at the church doing a class on careers. I don't know how that started. Was there any specific impetus on that?
yes. And what I was doing work-wise when we moved to Nashville, as you described, that was not a job where I had a salary. See, the choice that I had in having all of that debt was I could go get a job. And as I described, you know, the math wouldn't work. I'd never be out of debt. So the only thing I knew to do was to roll the dice as a totally independent entrepreneur again. No guarantee, but no ceiling. And that's always what I'm drawn to. I mean, you talk about, you know, motive. Wow. Give me an opportunity where there's no ceiling. You don't have to assure me of anything. And that's what I look for rather than, you know, please make sure I get X number of dollars on a paycheck on Friday and a 401k contribution. I've never had that kind of position. I've never had that kind of position in my
And
life.
I've never had any exposure of that position because of you either. But yeah, I mean, I understand that. It's like, you know, you got security, but you saw it as confines and limits. Over here, you have insecurity, greater risk, but freedom and no limitations.
No limitations. So I was doing that. And it was in a period of time where I met my good buddy, Dave Ramsey, at church. We had both crashed and burned the exact same month, didn't know ourselves then, but met a year and a half later. And we started to figure out what are we going to do when we grow up and put our big boy panties on. So in our church, he agreed to teach financial principles. I agreed to teach these career principles to keep you on track, to help both of us teaching ways to help people avoid the mistakes we had made. That was it. And the church says, we want you to do this here. So I started teaching in that period of time in the church, career life management. And I anticipated that I would have the 20-year-old who just lost his job at Burger King trying to figure out how to get another job before Friday and the rent is due. We had a few of those. What I didn't expect is that in that class we had dentists, physicians, attorneys, pastors, engineers, accountants. And I'm like, what are you guys doing here? I'm like, well, everybody sees me as doing okay, and I am, but I don't think this is it. I think there's something more. And it forced me to go deeper in this path of what is our work all about? It's not enough. I was seeing people who were making $400,000 a year, and they're saying, yeah, but my life stinks. I'm like, wow, it's not just about making money. It's about having work that is meaningful, fulfilling, purposeful. So in helping these people, I started to walk them through week after week. I was just staying 1 week ahead of them. I didn't have any curriculum I was using, 1 week ahead of them. And then people were asking me, they're saying, wow, I've got a son-in-law that's been without work for 3 months. I want him to hear what you just told us this morning. What do you have that I can give him? I didn't have anything. And so because of the repeated requests, then I put together just a rough compilation of my Sunday school notes in a 3-ring binder, 2 little cassettes on the inside cover. and I started making that available. And that's where things really started to explode.
But back up then. So you're doing this sales gig
Yes.
on your own, making money. And was there anything that happened between there? Or was it, you're talking with Dave, he's doing something and you just think you're going to be a nice altruistic Christian? And what can you help the church with? And you thought, I've done some career stuff, some business stuff. I've got something, I can probably help people a little bit, but it's not like you had any specific official acumen here or something to deliver. As you said, it sounds like you stepped into it with some wisdom, with some experience, but then it developed. You're learning. You're like you said, it sounds like you're learning and creating this stuff a week ahead of these folks, and they're helping you craft what's needed. You didn't come in saying, "Hey, here's what you need." You found it as you went along.
I was listening to the stories, helping them make day-to-day decisions, how to talk to their boss, how to ask for a promotion, all those things, or if you're really upset with this whole environment, how to do something on your own, where you're more in the driver's seat, just helping people see the broad spectrum of opportunities. Zero anticipation of having that have anything to do with my income, my livelihood. It was totally just ministry service to do that. That was it.
It isn't the story. So again, you're doing your day job over here to make ends meet.
Oh yeah, no, I was doing well at that point. I mean, I can do sales. I can land on my feet in sales any day of the week.
So you're doing that, you start doing this. And was this, the story I remember that, or I'll ask it, was it ever a conscious thought of, hey, this is something I could pursue, until the time came when the testimony I remember is mom saying, now you teach a Sunday school before church and you never end up actually in the church service because people keep asking you questions and you keep talking to them over here. Maybe you should charge for your time. Is that somewhere along the lines?
Yeah, that's pretty close. Yeah, it got to the point where we would no longer go to the church service because we would teach Sunday school, which was in between two services. And then the line would be so long of people who wanted to talk individually, we'd never get to church. So we moved it to a Monday night. So we would have 2 uninterrupted hours and started doing that. But in that process as well, I was doing a lot of just volunteer coaching where people say, man, I need you to meet with me to help me figure this out. I was doing that a lot in addition to the sales position that I was doing. Independent sales, totally commissioned. But I was, winning TVs and trips and things over there. We're doing that. And finally, I was actually in England because I, by then, was working on my doctoral program through Oxford. So I was in England for a 3-week period of time. And your mom kept getting the phone calls from people. Gee, I need to get in to see Dan. I need to get in to see Dan. And she started booking those people with an attached fee for seeing me. And I came back and she's like, I get your schedule set up for the next 2 weeks. These are paid clients. It really was, that's how it unfolded. And it was a tough thing for me. Again, back to my theological roots. It was a tough thing for me to see something I was doing as ministry. I mean, my dad was totally a volunteer as a pastor. Never got paid for that. That's something you do as ministry. Then you figure out how to put bread on the table in another way. So here I was in church serving as a Sunday school teacher, and all these opportunities were coming out of that. And now I'm being paid for that. That was a tough kind of transition for me to figure that out.
I mean, the story's great. Isn't it hard sometimes to look back and go, gosh, Dan, I want that kind of trajectory for you to say it wasn't, there's so much, that part especially was so organic for that to happen, that this wasn't you going, oh my gosh. Cause we hear a lot about that. People go to a seminar, they hear somebody talking, they go, holy smokes, this is what I want to do. I know it. I've got it solid and I know where I want to go. And not that always fleshes out. And here you are doing something that just kind of organically happened. I mean, how much would we all love for that to happen to us? What's the lesson there? What do you showcase to people? Literally, do you say, well, you were exposing yourself to things you were still seeking and pursuing. You were willing, you got involved with something. You didn't just stay holed up in your office trying to figure something out by yourself. You at least got out there. And because of that, and because of going towards something you had some interest in, then things happened. You know what I mean?
There's lesson,
Go ahead.
There's a lot of pieces in what you're describing, Kevin, and it is understanding what you experience joy in doing. I wrote a piece this morning. I said, I encounter a lot of, I said, if you are exhausted because you're working too much, maybe it's because you're not working enough in the things that make your heart sing. So, recognizing what really does give me joy and working with those people really did. Teaching that Sunday school class really did. So I kept leaning into that more. But then the question became, if I'm going to invest this much time in doing it, should it have something to do with generating income so I can feed my family? I'm helping other people thrive and prosper in their work. Should it mean that my family goes hungry? Well, in reconciling those, I saw opportunities to do both and, not an either or solution, but both and. But in 2002, in listening to people, heard Mark Victor Hansen, co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul, was promoting an event called Mega Book University in Los Angeles. And I talked to your mom. I said, hey, I want to go to this. I've got this little book. It's not even a book. I'd never talked to publishers, but it's a 3-ring binder. But here's a guy who kind of had a grassroots process of selling a product. Now he's sold a whole lot of them. Let's go to this thing. So I tapped my good buddy, Dave Ramsey, on his shoulder. I said, let's go to this thing. So we did. Dave and I went. We took Sharon and Joanne with us. We sat there for 3 days, listened to this kind, gracious gentleman talk about what he had done to sell a lot of Chicken Soup for the Soul, just those heartfelt stories. And I thought, boy, my material is helping people in much the same way he describes. We came back to Nashville, Tennessee. I started doing what he described to do. And in the next 30 months, sold over $2 million worth of that 3-ring binder, $39 a piece.
What year was that you went to the Mega
2002.
Book? How old were you?
I was, I would have been 50, 55.
Well, yeah. Because again, that's a great part of the story. How many people do you hear in their 50s who say, it's too late? And yet I'll never forget, it was you, I think it brought it to me that the majority of people, you may have said men, it could be people, but in a man's world aspect, men find their lives work in their 50s, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's more common than not. Now we hear about, the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world.
Sure.
Knock it out of the park, but that's so rare. That's why we hear about it. Most people, it's a slower process. So I had that horrible experience, recovered back to zero at 53. But then because of all the lessons that I learned, the process of acceleration, has been pretty cool since then. But that was in 2002. So everything that I do that people know about me today has happened since then. But that really put me on a path. Then because of the sales of that little product that I put together, then I had publishers knocking on my door. See, that's a reverse process. As you know, most people have an idea for a book and they go look for a publisher and they try to get some kind of a deal in advance. I didn't do that. I just started selling what people were asking for and publishers were knocking on my door. And what happened with that, I went back on the stage with Mark Victor Hansen in 2006 and described what had happened in those 4 years since I was there the first time. I got that first publishing deal. That book became very quickly New York Times bestseller, that being 48 Days to the Work You Love. And then because of the success of that, there was a bidding war for the next book, No More Mondays. And I did a deal with Random House where I got a $300,000 advance on that book. So I told that story, but that's where things really picked up with the opportunities that I was having just by helping people do what I had been doing in that Sunday school class. So it seems like an unexpected kind of twist, and it was for me. It wasn't where I was looking for success, certainly not financial success at all, but it developed because I paid attention to what was happening, paid attention to my heart, paid attention to the results that I was getting, and walked into that path.
When we look at motive and the reasons for doing certain things, you shared the pressure and the desire to do things that are, if I can just use the word altruistic, your dad was a volunteer minister. And so, here you are going in psychology, you can help people there. That's justified. Then you go into, sales and car stuff. And I don't know if at that point, I assume the primary motive is doing something you enjoy, but it was make money. You've got a growing family. I mean, you got to pay the bills or whatnot. Now you come into this opportunity to help people with their careers, work one-on-one. Was that a conscious realization that, hey, I could do something that now does more fulfill my desire for an altruistic bent in my work to combine ministry and vocation? Was that a conscious point that you realized that?
It was, but it didn't seem to make sense if you really look at it.
Okay.
Writing a book, putting thoughts down on paper. We know that 95% of authors in America never make more than $40,000 a year. That should be pretty discouraging if you want to be a writer. I looked at that, and again, being an entrepreneur and having the right mindset, led by all those old masters of achievement that I had listened to and read, I looked at that and said, how difficult can it be to put yourself into the 5%? I'm simply going to do things that most authors don't do. So that's what I looked for. What am I willing to do that I don't see authors doing? So the books that I have not been the direct generators of income, but they're the marketing tool that leads to enormous income because of what they lead to. So again, I'm always looking for a different approach. I asked a group recently, where is your pot of gold? And I referenced the old story about Samuel Brannan, who in 1848, there was a gold rush in California. And Samuel Brannan was this young guy. He bought a vial of gold and went back to San Francisco and got off and waved that little bag of gold. So there's more of this than you can haul out in wheelbarrows. 7 months later, 75% of the male population in San Francisco had gone about 90 miles to Fort Sutter, where they were looking for gold. Samuel Brannan never looked for gold. He opened a little store. He sold picks and shovels and blue jeans. He became the first bona fide millionaire in California, not because of the gold, but because he saw an opportunity that was connected closely to it. That's how I try to approach things. I'm not going to just follow the crowd. And as a kid in our household, if you came home and said, well, everyone's doing it, there was nothing that would nail the coffin shut quicker than saying that. If everybody's doing it, it's probably not worth doing. Let's look for something and not everybody else is doing. That leads to more personal fulfillment, more excellence in a lot of areas, and more success in ways that most people don't experience it.
Well, and you've obviously had more success than most people ever experience, and you are continually at a height of it. It's continuing to grow. As you look, though, let's go back then to the dawn of 48 days. And at some point, then that became your full-time gig. And it's been the longest thing you've been involved with, even as you have evolved in that. As you look at your motives, your reasons, your drives, I mean, the business has not been just one upward trajectory on the graph. I mean, you started out and it's because it can sound like everything. I mean, you had I remember, you had some really low years as well. Do you attribute, of course you can, to just learning that arena and learning that new business industry and whatnot. But and I ask this because even as I look in the past decade or more and look at my own drives and look and go, gosh, man, I had some things that I did there and the business was legit. That was fine. My drive that was a little errant is the thing that really sabotaged that. Do you see, the evolution of your own, consciousness of what was driving you, with the money and with ego or with altruism that you say, gosh, that went a little awry in that path through the process?
Well, there's been a lot of flux, a lot of change that has occurred. I'm not opposed to the change. I'm not looking to try to keep things the same. As I already mentioned, that is a death knell to try to keep things the same. So I welcome change, but there's been change both that I have initiated and change that I did not initiate. But here's an example and how I look at change. 3 years ago, the county that we lived in in Tennessee came to me and said, "You can't do these live events on your property." We've been doing events for 12 years. We developed events where we would allow 60 people there. And we had events like Right to the Bank, Coaching with Excellence, Innovate. We would have 7 events a year, 60 people. They paid $1,000 to come. Overhead was essentially non-existent because we weren't paying a hotel or anything. It was just in our barn on our property. So we were doing those 7 events, 60 people each, paying $1,000. That's a pretty good chunk of change. The county came along, says, "You can't do this." They closed us down instantly. Well, that was a pretty big blow, financially and in terms of business model. Then I got to thinking about it that, the most emotionally draining thing I do are those live events. Yeah, I can do them, but boy, they're exhausting to do. It's not really my favorite thing. I said, how could we put people together in a group where we would have the leverage of them being able to help each other in the way that they would do in that little room, but maybe even expand the concept? And we got into this thing called online memberships, started 48 Days Eagles. Today, 3 years later, we have about 1,100 people. It's $48 a month to be in there. You can see we've replaced the income and more. And here's the thing. So we're trucking along. 2020 shows up. If things had gone as I had planned, we would have 7 events planned for this year. As it was, we had 0. We were so perfectly positioned for what happened. So when those things come along, even if it's not my choosing, if it's unexpected and unwelcome, I immediately ask, what is this going to make possible? What is this going to force me to see outside of the norm, out on the edges of where I thought I was going, but is perhaps a new opportunity? I wake up every morning with that mindset.
Mm-hmm. When did you buy the place in Franklin?
We bought it 20 years ago.
20 years ago. I remember that. I don't know. Can't remember my own timeline at that point, but I remember when you bought it, you telling me at the time saying, "Look, we found this place. I can't really qualify for it, but your mom has spent as the consummate homemaker, spent so many years. You were just coming out of a not inspiring place." And you said, "I'm going to do some things that and I'm trying to say how you said it, but it was in essence, I'm going to do some things that are maybe not the wisest financial decisions, but I'm going to do them anyways to get this for your mother."
Absolutely. Well, I don't remember sharing that with you, but
You did. Well, I think I was involved in that was back in my mortgage days, and you took, because you did a B and C loan, you did a high risk loan. I think maybe
totally.
Yeah.
I got those 14 pages of faxed lien releases from the IRS. We bought that house the same month.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I was so unbankable. My credit was so trashed, but because there were some edgy things going on in the mortgage industry, I was able to make that happen. And that gave us the basis then to build all the things that we're talking about here.
Well, but that was my point. You didn't know that at that point. At that point, you were trying to bless your wife, and you did some sketchy things financially to do that, with no forethought that this would become I call it your compound. You know, that you're running your business on. I mean, it's part of your brand is the sanctuary, and Lord knows how many people have been there on site in this, well, in your home, but then also in it was like a barn mechanic shop that you guys then renovated into the sanctuary, which is part of the brand. But back then, I want people to hear that. I don't know if you've told that before, but I remember it because you told me in confidence. It probably made me feel good as a young man that you told me that. You said, "Man, this stuff is a high risk loan, probably a crappy rate. I'm finagling." I think you used the word finagling things to get this so that your mom has a place that she is proud and comfortable in. So I remember that at that point, and then to see what happened, and you'd say, "Well, obviously that was a good risk."
Yep. I had a 9.76% first mortgage for the 80% and a second mortgage for the other 20%. I had no money. Second mortgage on the rest of it. It was 12.85 on the second. Wow. That's how I went into that. But it was that important for the peace and to reward your mom for all those years of not having a house of our own, Now,
Yeah.
there was
No.
a period, there was one point in there where I set up a blind trust with you as the
Yeah.
head of that so I could buy a house without having it be detected by the IRS.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that a little bit. I mean, again, what a story. And for anybody hearing that, the house is soon to be on the market, right?
Yes, it is.
It'll
Yes.
cost a little more than it did back then.
Yes.
Yeah. So here you are now. And when we talk about motive, about reasons to go forward and drive and whatnot, you are at a place right now where you could coast from this point on. And you're at an age, how old are you now? 73?
73.
73. You're at an age right now where you're expected to. Man, this is retirement, coasting years, go play golf, tinker on cars, whatnot. And I love the testimonial that you gave. And shoot, I don't have it right in front of me. So you were a guest on the True Life show with myself and my buddy Randy James, who's your doctor. Last year, I have to go see what I'll put this in the show notes, but you were on there. You went through a health decline and then received, and this is what's in the show, a significant uptick in your health that you said not only put you back to where you were, but put you back better than you had been in a long time. And your testimony that we've talked about since then is you're saying, and man, I'm excitedly planning out the next 20 years of my life. You're 73. That's not the norm. And so even there to look at, somebody asked you, Dan, what's driving you today? Have you not done enough?
That question comes up a lot because we did just recently move. We moved into a golfing community where the norm is the guys are no longer working. They're rewarding themselves and because they can play golf every day. And I find myself having to apologize for what I'm doing because when I ask and I tell them about all the things that I'm doing, the message I know that comes across is, "Oh, I'm sorry.
You still have to, you still have
must
to
not have done a
work.
very good job financially. I hope you don't have to keep up this working thing too much longer." And that's not my mindset.
I'm going to get you a t-shirt for Christmas that says, I have more money than you. I just like my work.
I mean, I want to, write a chapter, write an inspiring blog in the morning and go to my funeral that afternoon.
Yeah.
I have zero desire to unplug from the things that I'm doing because in this path of finding what is authentic, what really does bring value to other people and is so rewarding, I can't imagine wanting to walk away from that. So it does look different at this season of my life.
So when you look at that though, to look at, again, primary drive. So this morning you, I assume, did not wake up with a primary driver of making money. Nothing against it, but that is not, I assume, the primary thing. What are some of the primary ones? Because I know that you're working on a book that has a different flavor than some of the others that came out. So when you look at what you want to do, achieve, impart, what's at the head of the list today?
I've had such a long period of time where I've been able to interact with people and get the affirmation from people about having the lights come on, being able to walk into more authentic work and more feeling of success for themselves. I mean, that keeps me going. Money is a byproduct of doing that. The money comes, but it's not what drives me. It's not what gets me up in the morning. The book that you're referring to is going to be titled An Understanding Heart. It's going to be different than the material that I've written prior to this that people know me for. It's not something that we're going to try to get down to $12 and try to get another New York Times bestseller. We're going to produce it in assimilated leather with gold pages, a bookmark. It's going to be very heavy, very expensive. It's very, very different. It's not the kind of thing publishers are excited about, but that's the privilege I get of kind of following my heart at this point. It's something that excites me. It's something that I would be excited about having in my hand. And so I'm going to do it like that and then just trust the results to be what they are. It doesn't have to be a big bestseller, but it's more authentically me. So I get to lean into those things that really are so fulfilling for me at this point, to do more of what really makes my heart sing. I mean, the day that we're in right here, I agreed to do an interview with you, but this is the only appointment I had today because this is one of my deep work days.
Oh.
Cal Newport, deep work where I have nothing scheduled. That's where I get to think about those projects I want to bring to life. I just did a webinar in our Eagles community on car hacking. It's it's outside of the norm again for what I've known for, but you can see it's been years and years and years that I keep having a theme of cars in my life. So car hacking, how to drive a really nice car without it costing you anything. I was more excited about doing that than I ever have been sitting down, helping somebody with a resume, or negotiating salary. It's something I really love. So I get to do those kind of things. And now I'm turning it into it's a short course to help open people's eyes to that, the possibilities in that arena. So those are the things that motivate me. Wow, I love getting up, coming into my office here, and just start unpacking those ideas, and in ways that'll inspire people to unleash their own greatness.
Well, there you go. Inspire people to unleash their own greatness. When you wrote 48 Days to the Work You Love, No More Mondays, and you've got, I don't even know, how many books do you have now?
Well, Wisdom Meets Passion, Red of the Day, Right to the Bank, probably 7 or 8.
Okay. So now, under an understanding heart, you're still, what you just said for people, I'm sure is still true. Do you find that, of course, your work, as much as you enjoy it, there is the purpose in it, is how you influence and impact humanity in your own unique way. Do you find yourself wanting to impart? I mean, of course, there's an evolution. So with an understanding heart, this new book, you're wanting to impart something different to people, or in a different way.
It's deeper.
Okay.
It's more philosophical and spiritual. Challenge the norms, challenge our narrow thinking, and just kind of push around the edges to help people see bigger possibilities. So it's that, but it's not method. It's not strategy. It's not tactics. It's way more mindset. But
Okay.
I love that space.
But would you say, so your impetus motive, again, to do this, to write the understanding heart, is it something that is, as you said, you enjoy doing it, but is it something that is a catalyst, what you see out there in the culture? And I know, you wrote the book, Wisdom, you and my brother, with Wisdom Meets Passion, and passion, turning passions into profits. It's always been a focal point of you. I also resonate with, and I had 2 people, John O'Leary and Sam Collier, within the span of a month, having them on the show. And they talked about, in this space of passions and purpose, asking, what is that thing that breaks your heart? And I resonated with that, because I've looked at a lot of the things I've gone after, and I go, is it a passion? Sure. But it almost comes to me more as a burden. Man, this is what hurts me for humanity, or it hurt me for myself, and I want to impart this. So when you look at this, is it the messages that you're gravitating towards now, are there some of them because of your continued angst for what you see going on?
It is. It's both my angst and my optimism about what can happen. That really does keep me driving forward in that space. Yeah. Is to create.
Well, there's angst and optimism. I don't know if people would put those together.
Yeah. And the way that I'm doing that book, I didn't sit down and give myself 60 days to write a manuscript. I've been writing one piece every Sunday morning for just the members of my mastermind. So just that small group. I've never put them out there, beyond that, except to my family members, but they don't go out beyond that. So I did not do those with the intention of having a book that would create profits. I did that just for the benefit of this small, intimate group that I have. But the one that I did this last Sunday morning was number 178. They average about 700 words. So if you do the math on that, I have enough content there for 3 books, but it's only been recently, with the encouragement of my mastermind, they're saying, you need to put these together and let other people read these. So now I'm backing into it, already having the content. Now we're just simply formatting it in a way that I can share it with a larger group.
Well, and for context, in your work at 48 Days, in helping people with businesses, you are a fan of multiple streams of income. You're a fan of multi-purposing things, of finding ways to help them make income within their business. And I say that to say, in your products and services that you've created, have you done some of them because you said, yeah, this could help people, and it's a way that we can leverage our material, your material, and make revenue. I mean, I know that you don't put any damper on that, and I say that though to come back to this, an understanding heart. It's something that you did not embark on for a profit necessarily, similar to the initial happenings of 48 days, pointing to your greatest works have seemed to come from the thing that you just authentically wanted to impart to people, not that you saw as an opportunity.
Yes, but I'll be the first to acknowledge that I also do see the financial opportunity there. You know, when I told you that I had that little Sunday school material that I put together, and then I started making that available to people, and I sold $2 million worth in a very short period of time. I mean, that got my attention.
Yeah.
They got my attention. And I thought, wow, there's opportunity here. This is a real hunger for people. This is a message that people want to hear. And so we very quickly looked at other ways to leverage that with, you know, live events, speaking opportunities, other ways that we gave access people to the same similar kind of material.
Yeah.
And I do that. I mean, when I put something together, I mean, I know putting together a car hacking opportunity in a car hacking webinar. Well, that may not, that's not going to be a big seller. I don't expect it to be, don't care about that. But if I make that a $97 course, just a short course people can go through to really open their eyes to, it doesn't have to be the biggest expense next to your mortgage. You can drive a nice car and really not have it cost you anything over time if you approach it right. If we have a $97 course and I only sell 1,000 copies, not a big deal, 1,000. Well, that's $100,000. That's still significant. And it's easy for me to see those opportunities that lurk around the edges of the work that I most enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks. This was, it was insightful. This is what I want out of this show, is dissecting the motives, why we do these things. And what you gave was such a great, your story is a great muse around the topic. Thanks for taking the time, Dad, and for sharing your heart.
Hey, oh, my pleasure. I love the conversation, especially with you, Kevin. Hey, there's one thing I want to add in real quickly, and that is a follow-up in describing the rough relationship with my mom and dad when I was a teenager making those decisions. I want to quickly add, time is a wonderful healer. As you know, I mean, my dad and mom absolutely adored Joanne, your mom, and what I did. I mean, there was no hard feelings. I mean, they changed dramatically over the length of their time as well. Some of those hard legalistic edges softened, but I want to just throw that in. Yeah, I did not end with my dad and I being estranged at all. We were very, very close.
I saw that. I saw his dramatic pride in what you did, even to the end of his days in the nursing home. He was proud of that book with your name on it. That's awesome. Thanks, Dad.
Hey, my pleasure.